just change something up. Okay, so welcome to another edition of Torah study. This week's portion is VaYishlach, and it begins on page 198 in Eitz Chaim, or whatever edition of Chumash you have. It's chapter 32 of the book of Genesis, beginning with verse 4. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. So I want to focus today on two verses that come up in the portion, and not focus on the beginning of the portion. So we're in the midst of a chapter in the story of Jacob and about to reunite with his twin brother Esau. So the portion begins with how Jacob is preparing for that reunion. So and how he sets up his family divides them up into different camps in order to protect them, how he sends messengers out to Esau to kind of gauge how many people Esau has with him, things like that. We have an encounter that, so Jacob is stressed about meeting his brother, and he has this encounter at night. Is it a dream? Is it a real encounter with an angel in which he's wrestling with his angel all night? And as a result of that wrestling match, Jacob is forever limps, and also has his name changed to Israel. Chapter 33 is the reunion with Esau, and then they part ways. So then, and what I want to do, okay, let's turn to page 205, the very last line. So this is the end of the story of Jacob and Esau parting ways. And so we're on verse 18, the very last line on 205. So it's chapter 33, verse 18. Vayavo Yaakov Shalem Ir Shechem Asher Be'eretz Canaan Biva'o Mipadan Aram Vayichan et Pnei Ha'ir. So Jacob became complete, whole, at peace. You can translate the word shalem any way you want. It could be a psychological wholeness, satisfaction. It could be physical wholeness, satisfaction. A couple of ways to translate that word shalem. So Jacob came, our English translation has safe. So that's interesting too, that the translation adds an interpretation of what Jacob's condition is: physical, emotional, psychological. So he came in that condition, but shalem means whole, to the city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan, when he was coming from Padan Aram. So in other words, the verse is telling us he came from Padan Aram, where he was living with Rachel and Leah, and siring children, and living with his father-in-law Lavan, all of that. So he came from Padan Aram to the city of Shechem, which is still there in what is the Palestinian territories today, or whatever your political leaning is in Judea and Samaria. Also, calling it Nablus instead of Shechem also highlights one's political leanings, but the city is still there. And he camped in front of the city, or before the city, or outside the city. 19, Vayiken et chelkat hasadeh asher nata sham ohalo miyad b'nei chamor avi Shechem b'me'ah kesita. And Jacob bought, and he bought the section of field where he had pitched his tent from the sons of Hamor, who was the father of Shechem, for 100 kesitas. Which is an unusual currency, where we know about shekel, how much Abraham bought the burial plot for Sarah for 400 shekels. We're used to shekel, but kesita, in the note here, the commentary that's above the line, kesita is not a coin, but an unknown unit of weight. Coinage does not appear in the Bible until after the period of the monarchy. Okay, so shekel is the modern currency of Israel, but it's also the silver weight that is used most commonly. So we don't know how much a kesita is, but he bought that area of field, that acreage, for 100 kesitas. Vayatzev sham mizbeach, vayikra lo El Elohei Yisrael. And he set up an altar, and he called it El, the God of Israel. Okay, so Jacob has set up shop outside of the city of Shechem. He bought that property, so it's his land, and he sets up an altar there. Now the verse that I want to look at, starting chapter 34, the start of the fifth aliyah, page 206, Vateitzei Dinah bat Leah, asher yalda liYaakov, lirot bivnot haaretz. Dinah went out, Dinah, the daughter of Leah, who was born to Jacob. So just an interesting way to identify her. Should be Dinah bat Yaakov or Dinah bat Yisrael. It's Dinah bat Leah asher yalda liYaakov. So Dinah, the daughter of Leah, who was born to Jacob, went out to see among the daughters of the land, or the girls of the land. It's just an awkward phrasing in the Hebrew. Essentially, so the English translation has, now Dinah, the daughter whom Leah had borne to Jacob, went out to visit the daughters of the land. Okay, so there's interpretation here that's involved in the translation. Okay, the daughter whom Leah had borne to Jacob, okay, that's a better way of possibly of translating Dinah bat Leah asher yalda liYaakov. Okay, that could be. Lirot bivnot haaretz literally means to see among the daughters of the land, which is translated as went out to visit the daughters of the land. Okay, so it's interpreting the to see among the daughters of the land as visiting. Okay, it's already through the interpretation, we're getting a sense, or at least the English translation here is giving us a sense of what Dinah went out to do. She wanted to hang out with people, with girls her age. That's what the English translation seems to mean when it translates it, went out to visit the daughters of the land. Hey, let's see, like she's the only daughter mentioned among the 11 sons so far of Jacob. Okay, because Benjamin hasn't been born yet. So that's one thing. So Dinah is the only girl that the Torah tells us about who's born in that family. Okay, so she doesn't have any playmates. So perhaps, and we have no idea how old she is at this point. She went out to see if there are any girls around her age. Okay, that's one thing. Before I share my screen with some commentaries about this, just some other things about the wording here. Why is she called Dinah, the daughter of Leah, as opposed to Dinah, the daughter of Jacob? Keep that in mind, because it's interesting. Other people in the Torah are not usually called by their mother's name. They're called by their father's name. So the fact that she's called Dinah, daughter of Leah, maybe that is supposed to teach us something. Is there something about Dinah that reflects Leah's quality, or vice versa, something about Leah that's reflected in Dinah's personality? Okay, perhaps. It's just the wording is a little bit odd. And then what is she going out to do? What is she hanging out with her friends to do? Right? So in every generation, kids hanging out with friends becomes a little bit more dangerous, right? So in my parents' generation, hanging out with your friends, especially in the summertime, if you don't have school, you could be outside your home all day and you'd be trusted to take care of yourself and you'd be safe. And then you come back at dinner time or lunchtime or something like that. So going out isn't as fraught with danger as it might be today, right? Since I was growing up and missing children were on milk cartons, it's less common to have, and in fact, it would be considered dangerous. You'd wonder at kids wandering the streets or the neighborhood without adult supervision. That's just not something that would occur anymore in Western society. But in biblical times, 3,000 years ago, it was common for people to be hanging out. So what are they hanging out doing? Okay, so it's not, I don't think it's dangerous to hang out, but it's girls hanging out. Are they hanging out? Are they perhaps testing the limits of what they're allowed to do? Is it that kind of hanging out? Or is it more innocent? Does her age matter here? We don't know how old she is. But let's just, one more sentence, and then I'll share my screen. Verse 2 on 207, Vayar ota Shechem ben Chamor ha-Chivi nesi haaretz, Vayikach ota, Vayishkav ota, Vaye'aneha. So Shechem, the son of Chamor, the Hivite, who is the chief of the land. So Shechem, the son of Chamor, the Hivite, who's the chief of the land, saw her, and he took her, and he lay with her, and forced her. Okay, so Shechem, the son of Chamor, who's the prince, because Chamor's father is the chief of the land, so he's son of the chief. He sees her, he lies with her, and rapes her. Okay, laying with her by force doesn't quite is, I guess, because the Chumash is read on Shabbat, and you want to have it as PG as possible. Vaye'aneha really is raping. Okay, he raped her. Okay, so now we have a sense of how old she is, right? She's not 3 years old. She's not 8 years old. She's a teenager, or at least, yes, she's of age where a man would see her and be sexually attracted to her. Okay, so she's of the age to be sexually attractive. And so now we can understand then how the rabbis might have interpreted these two sentences about Dinah and about what happened. So I'm going to share my screen and let's see what the rabbis had to say about this. Okay, and I'll make it bigger. Okay, so Genesis chapter 34, verse 1. Now Dinah, the daughter whom Leah had borne to Jacob, went out to visit the daughters of the land. Okay, Rashi. So the classic commentator is going to say this. The daughter of Leah, right? So commenting on the fact that she's called Dinah, the daughter of Leah, as opposed to the daughter of Jacob. So Scripture calls her. Why not the daughter of Jacob? But just because she went out, she is called Leah's daughter, since she too was fond of going out. And this is from the Midrash. Okay, so she's called the daughter of Leah because of what she's doing. What is she doing? She's going out. And why? So she's called the daughter of Leah because she's going out, because her mother, Leah, also was going out. As it is said in chapter 30, verse 16, and Leah went out to meet him. Let's turn back to chapter 30, verse 16, to see what exactly Leah was going out meeting Jacob to do. 30:16 is on page 176. When Jacob came home from the field in the evening, Leah went out. Vatetse Leah. Leah went out to meet him and said, "You are to sleep with me, for I have hired you with my son's mandrakes." There's a whole story about these dudaim, these mandrakes, and between Reuben, the firstborn, and Leah and Rachel. Okay, but what was she going out? Vatetse Leah. What was she going out to do? To meet Jacob and to say, "Hey, it's my turn to have you tonight." So she was going out for a sexual reason. So Rashi, based on the Midrash, says, okay, so the fact that she's called daughter of Leah is meant to remind us, we're supposed to remember something that Leah did. And just as Leah went out, so too Dinah is going out. And Leah went out to meet Jacob for a sexual encounter. Dinah must be going out for a sexual encounter. So, with an allusion to her, they formulated the proverb, like mother, like daughter. So that's what Rashi is saying based on the Midrash, that we're supposed to read this with casting aspersions on Dinah. That Dinah is not, let's see, she is not immoral, but she's loose. Okay, that could be one way to describe her. And I don't mean to be denigrating her by saying that. I really don't. And I don't mean to be denigrating this whole thing, because we'll see a little bit later. Well, here we have the rabbis already. They have a preconceived idea about women, and they don't trust women in general. That's the rabbis. And then they look for, and here is an excuse for why they say we should not be trusting women. So Dinah, what is she going out to do? We have to remember what happened to her. So perhaps the rabbis are saying it's her fault that Shechem raped her, because she was going out looking for it. She was going out we'll see something else about that in a moment as well. Nachmanides, who lived 200 years or so after Rashi, outside of Barcelona, the daughter of Leah, whom she had borne unto Jacob. The reason Scripture specifies the daughter of Leah is to state that she was the sister of Shimon and Levi, who were envious for her sake and avenged her cause. We're not going to read the rest of the story, but it's Shimon and Levi who lead the fight to kill all the men of the town of Shechem. And Scripture mentions further whom she had borne unto Jacob, in order to allude to the fact that all the brothers were envious for her. Right? So first, she is the full sibling of Shimon and Levi. Right? Same father, same mother. There are others who are other siblings who are the children of the maidservants of Rachel, and the maidservant of Leah, and the son of Rachel. So there's Joseph, then there's the sons of Bilhah, there's the sons of Zilpah, and then the sons of Leah. Okay, so the sons of Leah are the full siblings of Dinah, and it would make sense that they would, it would make more sense that Reuben and Judah would be involved here, because they are the oldest of the children, but Shimon and Levi are there too, and Shimon and Levi appear later in the story. So for Rashi, based on the Midrash, she's called the daughter of Leah to remind us of what she was going out to do. Just as Leah went out for sexual intentions, so too Dinah is going out for that. For Nachmanides, for Ramban, she's the daughter of Leah to tell us why Shimon and Levi are the main actors in the story who enact revenge, because they are the full siblings of Leah, and in biblical society and in modern Arab society today, brothers protect the honor of their sisters. Okay? Now we'll try to get into other ideas. Could there be other intentions that might shine a favorable light on Dinah? So Nachmanides is neutral about Dinah, but it's more about Shimon and Levi doing this act of revenge. For Rashi, based on the Midrash, it's insulting to Dinah, assuming that it's her fault that she was raped. Okay, she had it coming to her. So here's this first comment. I had quoted or used Dirshuni in a prior session of Torah study a couple of weeks ago. Dirshuni is a modern women's midrash on the Torah, and there are several volumes of it. So the first one, the English here is not a translation of the Hebrew; it's a different comment. So this Hebrew comment is Vateitzei Dinah bat Leah Asher Yaldali Akov Lirot Bivnot Haaretz. That's our verse. Amru Chachamim, the sages said, Vateitzeh. What is she going out to do? Sheyatzah mekushetet b'malvush lo ra'ui ubishel kach ba'a al onsha. So she went out all, I could say in Yiddish, verpitzt, all dressed up, okay, but dressed up in a provocative way, okay, not dressed up like she's going to a black tie event, but dressed up that way in an outfit, b'malvush lo ra'ui, in an unfitting outfit, and not I would say immodest or revealing. She was all verpitzt in a revealing outfit, and because of that, she got her punishment. Shene'emar, as it says, vayikachota, vayishkav, ota, vaye'aneha. Right? What verse 2, which we read. Sha'alu lahem. So they asked the rabbis. So this is the format of this volume of Dirshuni. Like, who's doing the asking? So women asked the rabbis, Ha'im amra lo? Did she say no? Like, in other words, was she silent? Was she allowing herself to be raped? Didn't she scream out no? Right? Ha'im tza'aka, didn't she scream? Ella ki basadeh mitza'a. He found her in the field. Tza'aka ve'ein moshia la. Right. So there's a verse in Deuteronomy chapter 22 about which has laws dealing with violation of women. So if one has the intention of violating a woman and it's out in the field, you assume that she screamed, but nobody heard to save her. Okay? So that's the context here. They were out in the field. She must have screamed. Mikan lamdu chachamim. From here, the rabbis taught she'ein hachutz batuach l'ne'arot, that the outside isn't safe for girls. Like, it's not safe for girls to be outside. Mutav tilamdena benot Yisrael ki kol kivuda bat melech penima. It is better that the girls of Israel, that Jewish girls, should learn the verse from Psalm 45:14. All the honor of the daughter of the king is inside. The verse is talking about inner character, but translating it this way, the honor of the daughter of the king should be inside. In other words, to maintain the honor of girls, of Jewish girls, they should stay indoors. So, one teaching of Dirshuni says, yes, rape occurred here, but don't assume, like the Midrash did, that she had it coming to her. No, she screamed out. So let's give her the benefit of the doubt that she screamed out. And then let's learn that maybe it'll be safer for girls to stay indoors. Or I guess you could learn from this also, safer for girls to have an escort. Like girls should be protected. This is one sense from Dirshuni, another from the same volume of Dirshuni, but for some reason, so I cut and paste from Sefaria, and on Sefaria, the first volume of Dirshuni was only in Hebrew, it wasn't translated, and this other citation was translated. So now here's another idea of how we can understand this, and Dinah went out to see the daughters of the land. Dinah was a quiet person and had no voice. All of this, why? In other words, what does it mean to see the daughters of the land? Like, what do we understand from this unusual phrasing, right? Because our English translation just avoids the awkwardness of lirot bivnot haaretz and translates it as to visit the daughters of the land. So it glosses over the awkwardness and translates it in a way that we don't even think twice if we're reading it in English. But if we're reading it in Hebrew, we know it's awkward. So why is the Torah telling us to see the daughters of the land? Like, what does that mean? So it says, since her family didn't listen to her or speak much with her, like our sages said, do not speak much with a woman, therefore she went out to see the daughters of the land. Okay, so she had no voice. Either she was quiet, or she just wasn't listened to because she's a girl. So she wanted to be with fellow girls. Now it goes on. Dinah was like someone mute. As it says, Dinah went out to see, and it doesn't say she and not to hear. So it could have said, Vateitzei Dinah lishmoa bivnot haaretz, which would also be awkward, to hear among the daughters of the land. It doesn't say that. It says to see. So this commentator is suggesting we got to learn something about seeing as opposed to hearing. Okay? And further, and he slept with her and violated her, and it doesn't write, and Dinah cried out. Right? It doesn't say that in the Torah, that she cried out. And would you have thought for a moment that Dinah did not cry out? She was like someone mute, that from the pain and from the shame, she was quieted and struck dumb. Okay, so now this totally turns the story from a sexist, misogynist interpretation found in Rashi based on the Midrash to something that is totally feminine. The idea that it's written by men, but we have to understand it from a woman's perspective. Of course she cried out. All women are going to cry out if they're being attacked and being raped. So we should not assume that she did not cry out. We should assume from the seeing that is here, and there's no hearing, and there's no voice, there's no talking. So we should assume that she was in shock from what was happening to her and could not speak. That does happen in trauma cases, that people can't talk for a while or for a long time until they recover. So this is I think, to put all this, I think all of these together help us understand the way we want to understand it. Now, if you've read Anita Diamant's The Red Tent, the historical fiction, you'll see a lot of midrash about Dinah, because a lot of the story of The Red Tent is about Dinah herself, and a lot of that material that Anita Diamant took in order to help create the story is from men over the generations. So she had to sift through all the anti-feminist material in our tradition and come up with a story that might be a little bit more favorable to Dinah and to other women in the story. So that's the point of Dir Shuni as well. These volumes written by women scholars and authors in Israel today to try to provide a feminine perspective to the text of the Torah. And I think it's important for us to keep that in mind, to help us understand that the stories that we learn in Hebrew school or in day school shouldn't be the only stories about the people in the Bible. There are other ways to interpret the text too. Okay, any thoughts or comments about this before we look at one other section? Yeah, Lori.
Yeah, in the Rashi comment, it also looked like he was looking down on Leia.
Yes, that's true
I,
too.
I mean, yeah,
Yes.
and I'm wondering, just for being assertive. I mean,
Well, so there's a preference among the rabbis in the Midrash that Rachel is the preferred wife of Jacob over Leah, and and that's because of what we learn about Rachel later in the Bible. So um, when the Jews when the Jews were exiled to Babylonia, the Babylonians destroyed the first temple in the 6th century BCE and led the Jews into exile to Babylonia. Jeremiah describes the the parade of Jews out of Judah, the southern kingdom of Israel, to Babylonia, going by way of the tomb of Rachel. And we know from later in this portion that no, it's in next week's portion that Rachel dies in childbirth, and Jacob buries her there, as opposed to bringing her to the burial place in Hebron, where Abraham and Sarah and his parents are buried, as a separate burial spot. So the fact that there's a separate burial spot, and Jeremiah envisions the people walking by Rachel's tomb and Rachel crying as her children are walking by. So it elevates Rachel to a higher status than Leah. And also, according to the rabbis, Leah was destined to marry Esau, and Rachel was destined to marry Jacob. And so Leah, at least the rabbis say, she wasn't so happy about it because the Torah describes Leah as having weak eyes. And she had weak eyes because she was, from all the crying that she did, because she knew that she was supposed to be marrying the idolater, evil Esau. Okay,
mhm,
so Leah doesn't have great, I mean, she is a matriarch, but Rachel is the preferred wife. She's the one that Jacob fell in love with first, right? So she's the second best. And so the second best, and then with also what she did with those mandrakes to try to force Jacob to be with her that evening, that also doesn't look favorably
mhm,
have the rabbis look favorably upon her.
mhm,
Okay, so yes, so these things, the rabbis, there are very few women in the Bible that the rabbis from the very beginning say positive things about.
mhm,
Um, they are like Sarah and Rebecca and Rachel are esteemed by the rabbis, and Miriam, Moses' sister, she's esteemed by the rabbis. And Esther, Queen Esther, is esteemed. But other women who appear in the Bible, not so much. Okay, so that's why we need Dear Shuni to help us give to balance out the perspective on, especially for the women in the Bible. Okay, let's, it's
I,
11:40.
I
Yes,
just
go
want to
ahead.
mention, I
Go ahead.
think you had said in some previous Torah reading that there's a midrash that Dinah's daughter from 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 the rape or whatever was
Yes,
the wife of Joseph.
yes,
That's
yes. So
how the
that's
rabbis
a
said they married
yeah.
Jews.
Yeah, so that comes up in a few weeks when Joseph is becomes second in command in Egypt. He's given an Egyptian woman, or at least a woman with an Egyptian name, to marry. Um, and so the um, Midrash doesn't like to have random people. They like to think, they like to create a story in which these seemingly random people are not really random at all. And that, because we don't hear from Dinah anymore after this story. What happened to her? So somehow, according to the Midrash, she ended up in Egypt. And um, and her daughter ended up like a priestess in Egypt, and ends up being Joseph's wife. So so he marries his niece. Is that okay? According to Torah law, you're not supposed to do that, but the laws in Leviticus about who you can marry and who you cannot marry weren't given yet. So yeah, so in the red tent, that features prominently as part of the story. Yeah. Is that a good thing though? Does it end up making Dinah and her daughter into positive light? I don't know. I have to read the book again to be reminded of that whole scenario. Okay, I want us to look for a moment. We're not going to have, you know what? We'll be able to look a little bit. So after the Dinah story, we come to chapter 35. The whole rape of Dinah, which leads to the Shimon and Levi leading the rest of the brothers to attack the city of Shechem and kill all the men in the town. That's the rest of chapter 34. Chapter 35, we'll get to verse 8 in a moment. Let's just for the sake of time, read it in English. God said to Jacob, we're on page 211, start of chapter 35. God said to Jacob, arise, go up to Beit El, and remain there, and build an altar there to the God who appeared to you when you were fleeing from your brother Esau. So Jacob said to his household and to all who are with him, rid yourselves of the alien gods in your midst, purify yourselves and change your clothes. Come, let's go up to Beit El, and I'll build an altar there to the God who answered me when I was in distress, and who has been with me wherever I have gone. They gave to Jacob all the alien gods that they had and the rings that were in their ears, and Jacob buried them under the terebinth that was near Shechem. As they set out, a terror from God fell on the cities round about, so that they did not pursue the sons of Jacob. Right? The sons of Jacob had just killed all the people of Shechem, so people would have been afraid of them, or maybe people would have wanted to attack them to fellow Canaanite cities to enact revenge. Okay, so that's what verse 5 is referring to. 6, thus Jacob came to Luz, that is Beit El, in the land of Canaan, he and all the people who were with him. There he built an altar and named the site El Beit El, for it was there that God had revealed himself to him when he was fleeing from his brother. 8, Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, died and was buried under the oak below Beit El, so it was named Alon Bachut. Bachut refers to boche, to cry. So the oak, the crying oak, or the oak of tears, something like that. And then verse 9, God appeared again to Jacob on his arrival from Padan Aram, and he blessed him. And then there we have the blessing. So now, who's Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, and why is she appearing here? And what's so important about her that the Torah is mentioning that she died? It's like a parenthetical note that's not necessary to the story about God blessing Jacob and his family. So what's the point of Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, died and was buried under the oak below Beit El, so it was named Alon Bachut? Okay, what is all this referring to? Right? Do you understand how we're not referring to Deborah again? We never heard of Deborah before. And why all of a sudden is she mentioned here in the midst of the Torah telling us about the process of Jacob being blessed? Okay, so we understand the difficulty in the text, which would prompt rabbis to comment on it. Okay, so Deborah, so this is the verse. And so Rashi has this to say about it. And Deborah died. How came Deborah to be in Jacob's house? Right? In other words, what is Rebekah's handmaid or nurse, who was Jacob's mother, what is she doing with Jacob? Right? You understand? Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, died and was buried under the oak below Beit El, so it was named Alon Bachut. What is she doing hanging out with Jacob? But the explanation is because Rebekah had promised Jacob back in Genesis 27, then I will send and fetch thee from thence. That is, in other words, Rebekah says to Jacob, go run away from your brother so he doesn't kill you. Hang out with my brother Lavan there and his family, and when it's safe, then I will send and fetch thee from thence. From thence. That's what she's saying in Genesis 27. So Rashi's suggesting she sent Deborah to him to Padan Aram to tell him to leave that place, and she died on the return journey. I learned this from a comment of Rabbi Moses Hadarshan, Moses the interpreter, and he refers to Moses Hadarshan a few times throughout his commentary on the entire Torah. Okay, so who is this Deborah? We don't know, but she is more significant than, or more information than, she's Rebekah's nurse. Only that, what is she doing here? She's the one who let Jacob know that it was okay, that it's safe to come back now that Esau isn't out to kill him anymore. Okay, so that's how Jacob knew and felt that, okay, now was time. He had all these children already. It's time to go back home. How did he know? Because Rebekah had sent Deborah to do that. Okay, so, the other idea here from Rashi is under the oak. The Targum, the Aramaic translation, renders it by on the lower part of the plain. So, because there was some level ground above on the slope of the hill, and her grave was beneath this. Okay. The plain of Bet El bore the name of Alon. See Rashi on Genesis 14. And Agadah, so a story about this, states that he there received news of another mourning, for he was informed that his mother had died. Okay, so now the other midrashim, which we might not get to, talk about, we don't hear about Rebekah dying in the Torah. We hear about Abraham and Sarah and Isaac and Jacob and Rachel. But what about Rebekah? We don't hear about Rebekah dying. Okay, the Torah doesn't tell us about that. Okay, so there's a sense that maybe Rebekah had died. In Greek, alon means another. Tachad ha'alon, under the other. Because the time of her death was kept secret in order that people might not curse the mother who gave birth to Esau, Scripture also does not make open mention of her death. Okay, so now, bear with me here as I explain this. Apparently, so there's a sense that Jacob is not where Isaac and Rebekah are. And Isaac had, I believe Isaac had not died already, but Isaac is blind, right? That was the whole story about how Jacob could dress up as Esau and get the blessing, because Isaac, to take advantage of Isaac not seeing. So Isaac is blind, and he can't help with Rebekah's burial. The only one around is Esau, and Esau's an idolater. So if Esau buries his mother, then people are going to say, look at this woman who gave birth to an idolater. We can't have that. She has to be buried at night, so that there won't be a crowd, and that she could be buried privately so that people won't say she's a mother of an idolater. And now the death of Deborah here allows the Torah to perhaps secondarily teach that Rebekah had died too, and this was a tree for weeping, because he was weeping, Jacob was weeping for his mother, as well as weeping for Deborah's death. Okay, so from something parenthetical in the text, we get these bigger stories that try to make sense of who this Deborah is and what is she doing here, and also to piggyback that onto perhaps having something to do with the death of Rebecca as well. The other commentaries here are just too long. We just don't have the time to get into it. And okay, well, here we'll do this one. That Se'ena Ura'ena is a commentary put together in the 1800s by rabbis in Yiddish for women. So it's traditional midrash and the commentary of the Torah for women to learn, and it was written in Yiddish. So this is the English translation. Deborah died on the way with Jacob, and Jacob buried Deborah. At that burial, Jacob was told that his mother had also died. However, the verse does not want to explicitly write that Rebekah died. Rebekah had been put into her grave, and nobody knew when she had died, in the expectation that she would not be cursed, that she had an evil son, Esau, the evildoer. So writes the Midrash that when Rebekah died, the people said, who would accompany Rebekah to the cemetery? Abraham is dead, and Isaac is blind. Jacob has gone to Padan Aram, and if Esau will accompany her, people were cursed that she had an evil son. Therefore, they carried Rebekah to the cemetery at night. That is also why the verse does not say when Rebekah died. That is why it is written, Alon Bachut. This means 2 reasons for crying. In other words, if we read Bachut as Bachot, the plural, like a made-up plural of crying. One is that he cried because his mother died, and the other reason he cried is because his mother was not buried with honor. Okay, so that's why it's called the crying oak, or the oak of tears, because of crying over his mother and his mother having been buried quietly. Okay, so just wanted to share these midrashim with us today, and we'll stop here for today. We're not going to meet again the next 3 weeks. There is no class because I'll be in Israel. And so I'll be back to be able to have Torah study the Wednesday between Christmas and New Year's, whatever day, 29, 30, December 30, New Year's Eve, December 31st, we will have, that'll be our next session of Torah study. Okay? So have a good rest of the day, everybody. Happy Hanukkah in a couple of weeks, and look forward to seeing you again the end of December. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.